Welcome to Season 2 of the Erotic Realm podcast, where we explore the world of eroticism, one erotic realm at a time. I'm Em, a sexologist and kinkster. The mission of the Erotic Realm is to humanize desire in all of its forms, including darker desires. Each episode, we dive deep into the psychology of desire with a sexpert, everyday kinkster, or a kink expert. This is an independent podcast. To support it, please consider becoming a paid subscriber at psychologyofdesire.com, where you'll also find deep dives into desire and surveys that you can participate in. You can also sign up there to get the podcast delivered directly to your inbox when it's released. And now for today's episode. Before we get started, I have something very excited to announce. The podcast has been nominated for the Australian Adult Industry Awards in the category of Best Podcast. So if you'd love to vote for the Erotic Realm to win this category, it would be amazing to have your support. I'll put a link to the voting website in the show notes, and I'd really appreciate it if you could give it a click and a vote, and who knows, maybe it will win Best Podcast. Thank you so much for listening and for your support. If you'd like to support the podcast, please consider checking out the brands that support the Erotic Realm. There's FirmTech, whose tech ring offers fascinating insights into sexual health by tracking erection quality and nocturnal function. Splash Blanket, who create luxurious waterproof blankets designed for comfort, intimacy, and real-life messes. ProDX Health, who offer discreet, at-home STI testing. While Karoo and Lovents make premium pleasure technology, from couple toys to long-distance interactive devices. Then there's Lioness, who are doing something truly unique in sex tech, using biofeedback and orgasm data to help people better understand their arousal. I'm also partnering with Flow and Desire, science-backed libido support supplements designed to support sexual vitality and well-being. These are brands that I find genuinely interesting, science-backed, and I've used them myself, so they come with my recommendation. You can find the links to all of them in the episode description. If you try them, use the links below. It supports the show at no extra cost to you. And now, back to today's conversation. The following conversation explores gay leather culture, erotic freedom, and how kink can become a way of understanding both power and selfhood. Today, I'm joined by Race Bannon, BDSM educator, leatherman, switch, and the author of Kink Is My Superpower, for a rich exploration of sexuality, identity, and the evolution of queer erotic culture. We talk about entering underground play spaces in the early 80s, how leather communities created belonging during profound cultural change, and why kink has long been about far more than sex. We explore masculinity, switching, HIV-era community memory, the diversification of gay kink culture, including newer identities such as pup play, and how queer communities have continually reinvented erotic freedom. At its heart, this is a conversation about power, belonging, and what kink can teach us about becoming more fully ourselves. Enjoy. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Erotic Realm. Today we're exploring the erotic realm of Race Bannon. Welcome, Race.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. Great to have you. So before we jump into all things kinky and erotic, I'd love to start with you as a human first. What does your day-to-day life look like?
My day-to-day life is, I am retired from corporate life, so I have a lot of time to do whatever I want to do. And I write a lot, I read a lot, I do a lot of community work. I am fairly politically involved here in the United States, which at the moment is a big frickin' deal. So I allow my life to flow. I'm very much about living in the moment as much as possible, but most of my life is wrapped up in projects of some sort, either personal or community.
Sounds very busy, even though you're retired.
Yes.
Okay, so let's jump into the fun stuff and your eroticism. How do you identify both in terms of your sexuality and your kink identity?
So, in terms of my orientation, I always identify as gay. When I am pressed on that, even though we don't really use the Kinsey scale much anymore, I always say I'm like a 5.7, 5.8 on the Kinsey scale. So, there's a little wiggle room in there, but I identify as gay. I identify as kinky, sometimes as a leatherman, sometimes as a fetishist, sometimes as a BDSM player. It kind of depends upon the realm that I'm navigating in, community wise, how I identify. Uh, and in terms of what I do personally, in the kink realm, the erotic realm, uh, I had a long, long, long history as primarily a top and a dom in the kink world and the BDSM world and the leather world. And in recent, I'd say the last 15 years or so, maybe 20, I have morphed into a true switch or versatile person. That said, I still tend to lean more on the top and dom side most of the time, but in my head, I'm 50-50.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fascinating. You mentioned that you move between three labels in particular that stood out to me: leatherman, fetishist, and BDSM player. I don't think I've had anyone on the podcast yet that's referred to themselves as a BDSM player. Are you able to speak to each one of those and just how they come up for you and what they look like?
Yeah, in the gay men's community in particular, the label of leatherman still holds a certain amount of cachet. When I came out into kink, BDSM, and what we called leather, it's certainly in the United States, we called it that in the early 70s. You were identified as a leather person, a leather man, or a leather woman. And it was considered kind of an umbrella term to encompass all things kinky, BDSM, edgy, etc. It had a definite aesthetic and an ethos about it, but Leatherman still holds a certain amount of cachet, especially in the gay men's community. As for being a BDSM player, uh, that has been something I've been since I came out at 17 years of age. It's the very first bar I walked into when I came out as a gay man. I was underage and looked of age. And it was an era when they didn't card you very much. And I walked into the preeminent gay men's leather bar in Chicago and immediately thought to myself, I'm home.
Mm.
And so, yeah, so uh, encompassed within that leather bar and that community was BDSM, and I was attracted to it immediately. And so I consider BDSM sort of a subset of the kink community, of the leather community, whatever you refer to it as. And so I do definitely identify as that. And what was the other one I said? Did I say fetish player?
Yeah, fetishist. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is something I am less of, but I am some. In other words, I wear leather, I wear rubber, I wear garb that I consider sexy, from a sort of fetishistic standpoint. I am not as much a fetishist for leather and rubber and things like that as many people in that realm. My standing joke is when you want to catch a duck, you walk and talk and dress like a duck. And so I'm not a sort of hardcore fetishist in the sense that I'm a fetishist for the materials or the particular garb or the gear. But there's a certain part of me that is.
Right. Mm. Can you take us back to that moment? You said you were 17 and you walked into that bar. What year was it? And it's just so people can place it. And what was it that felt like home when you walked into that bar?
Um, let's see, it would have been 1972.
Wow.
I think that's the right year. Yeah. Yeah. I'm 72 years old. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, I've been around for a while. So I've been in the scene for a very long time. And it was magical. I had gone into one other gay bar also in Chicago, and so the Gold Coast, which was what the leather bar was called, was really my second gay bar. But there was something about the erotic feel of it. It was so unabashedly sexual. There were paintings by a very famous artist named Etienne all over the top of the bar of men of all different kinds and all kinds of garb and sexual positions and things like that right in the bar. So the moment you walked in, you're hit with this imagery of what I had been fantasizing about for a very, very long time. And then there was a bar in the center, and then there were men all around this massive space, some in leather, some in what I will call Levi cowboyish kind of garb, or I'll say generically butch garb, sort of very hyper masculine kind of garb. And that is something that certainly at the time I was extremely attracted to. And so, and the other thing is that they were very, very nice to me. They knew, obviously I was 17, I looked older, but I had facial hair even at 17, so I could pass for older, but they were kind to me, and they didn't try to take advantage of me, and they kind of took me under their wings and said, we know you're new here, and this is what's going on here, and you get to do as much of this as you do or don't want to do, and if you want to fit in here, you kind of dress this way. I wasn't perfectly dressed for the environment because I didn't really know at the time. So they said, you might be more comfortable dressed a little bit this way. Go out and, buy yourself, a pair of boots and just wear a white t-shirt and jeans, and you'll fit in. And they were really, really nice to me. And when you're first coming out gay and publicly sexually, having people that are really nice to you and introduce you to it in a very kind and loving way has a tremendous impact. And that's why it felt like home right away.
It sounds amazing. It was almost like a temple kind of vibe, the way you described it when you first entered and saw the paintings above the bar.
It was a temple of sorts, and in the vast number of leather bars that have existed, the Gold Coast still is considered one of the iconic leather bars in the world.
Does it
It's
still
no longer
exist?
around, but
Okay.
no, it doesn't exist anymore, sadly.
Okay, so what would you say are your top 3 kinks currently?
Ooh, what are my top things? In large part because of the intimate circle that I play in the most, fisting is a big thing. I do quite a bit of that as a top. I have not quite gone there as a bottom, but I love it, and a lot of the men in my intimate social circle are into that. Everything that is BDSM, but if you need me to parse out something that I really love within BDSM, impact play, flogging, single tails, things like that, I really, really love.
What do you love about it?
I love that I typically do it more as a dom and a top, although I have definitely done it, all of that, as a sub and a bottom as well. There's something about the dramatic amount of control one person has over another. And if they're good at it, they know how to bring you just to the edge of a bit too much, but they don't go there. And if you want it pushed a little bit, it's a really great kind of scene to be able to calibrate the I often liken it to going if you have a 5-gear car, you go through first gear, then second gear, then third gear. I know cars these days don't have those, but the ability to go through those various levels and kind of read the person or have them read you is really powerful. It's also incredibly intimate. You let somebody hit you consensually, and you're both having a good time with it. It's one of the most intimate things I think two people can do. Let's see. And you wanted one other thing, a third thing. Let's see. I would say anything involving power dynamics. By that, I mean, dominant and submissive, whether it be on the light end of the spectrum or the heavier end of the spectrum, all of that appeals to me. And percolating throughout my entire kinky life, power dynamics has been one of the most consistent things in there. So even if I'm playing with somebody and it's not a rigid dominant submissive thing, there's always this shred of dominance and submission that is percolating, at least in my head. Let's put it that way. So anything in that realm, I really, really enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, speaking of dominance and submission, you mentioned that one of the formative experiences of your life was attending your first play party in LA in the early 1980s. Can you take us back to that night, and what do you remember most about it and why?
Sure. I'm from Chicago originally. I had been living in Chicago for quite a while. It's where I came out, leather, kink, gay, etc. Then I moved to New York. I was a dancer for a while. And so I moved to New York for the career. And at one point, and throughout the Chicago and the New York time periods, I was what I would call a lone wolf player. I really wasn't a club joiner. I really didn't have a wide social circle of kinky people. I would go to the clubs, I would find people to play with. And I did that a lot for most of my Chicago and New York time. Then in 1980, I moved to Los Angeles. And I stumbled upon a play party that was being held by a club called Avatar. It is, and it still exists. It's a gay men's leather / BDSM club, and they were having a play party, and which is something they didn't do much of at the time. Interestingly, they didn't have a lot of them, but they were having one, and I went to the party. I saw a very hot guy that thought I was interesting too, and we got together and I began to play, and I played for a couple of hours. And when I play, I'm very focused. I'm just one of those people that is very into the person I'm playing with at that moment. And then suddenly I turned around and there were 20, 30 people just standing around watching my scene.
Mm.
And I had gone to a lot of sex clubs and play parties before, but I never had that experience happen. So I did the aftercare. The guy comes down. We're doing all that. And then when we finally separated and I was alone, somebody from the club came up and said, "Where did you learn to do all that?" And I said, "I've just been doing it. I've learned it from doing it for years and years and years with various people and in various environments." And they said, "Could you teach us how to do that?" And I went, sure. And that was really the beginning of my public kink life.
Mm.
I taught many classes. I ended up being on the board of the organization. I met a very famous leatherman by the name of Guy Baldwin during that time period. Guy was one of the world's most famous leathermen at the time, and in some ways still is. And we ended up becoming partners during that time period. And without sounding arrogant, I hope, we kind of became this kink leather power couple.
Oh, amazing.
And because of my relationship with Guy, he was sub to me, he was collared to me at the time, which was something he was a dom for a while before that. So that's a whole nother story. But it was through him, quite frankly, that I was ushered into the upper echelon of BDSM and leather and kink, certainly in the gay men's world. And actually, not just the gay men's world, because we ended up navigating within the heterosexual and what we now would call pansexual and also the queer communities. So we mostly stuck to the gay men's community, but we definitely navigated within some of the others. But that was the beginning of me as a public kink persona, for lack of a better way of saying it.
Mm-hmm. So upper echelon, what do you mean by that? What does it look like? What kind of experiences were you having? What was your life like at this time?
Well, as but one example, there is a very famous, I'm not going to say it because they try to stay a little under the radar. There's a very, very famous gay men's BDSM play party once a year. it takes place over the course of a week. It's a long event, and it's at a venue, and everybody at the venue is part of that. And as I used to say it, the creme de la creme of gay BDSM players used to go to this. And I witnessed a level of play and a variety of play that I had never witnessed before. Not just bondage, but very complex, ornate, very skilled bondage. I had never seen people throw single tails before. That was something that really wasn't done very much. And single tails and bullwhips were a complete new territory. I saw people in very intense power dynamic relationships. I was in a very intense power dynamic relationship with Guy, but I had not witnessed lots and lots and lots of other people around me in the same kind of dynamic. And so I say upper echelon, not to say that people that don't play at that level are lower echelon. It just, but it was a kind of play and community and eroticism and sexuality that I had not been exposed to in that kind of quantity all at once. And so I learned a lot. I made amazing connections. I played in ways that I had never played before. I learned all kinds of interesting things. As an example, I was doing fire play there because it had a big outdoor area. You could do fire play. It was very erotic. It was very sensual. It was very flashy, literally and figuratively. And that's something that I learned to do there that I had never, ever even thought about before going to that event.
I love the mystery, and I love that there's still underground play parties happening. That's amazing. So it sounds like your relationship with Guy was one of your first long-term power dynamic relationships. What would you say was your biggest learning from that relationship and the exploration of power dynamics that you had with Guy?
This is going to sound silly, but I actually mean it. We had a very, very serious, hardcore, if you will, power dynamic dom sub. That said, we laughed all the time.
Love it.
He's brilliant. He has a brilliant intellect. We had the most amazing conversations, and we would laugh all the time, and we had a really good time. Yet we were able to maintain this very hierarchical, lovely dom sub relationship within all of it. And I think it taught me that what you see in porn, what you see when somebody is sort of in high power dynamic at an event, but you don't really see the part at home when they have to wash the dishes and clean the house and all that kind of stuff. I think I realized I could be a fully rounded kinkster, BDSM person, leatherman. And if Guy taught me anything, I think it was that.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to highlight because a lot of people from the outside looking in think that it's always a very serious endeavor, BDSM, but there's a lot of play and laughter that comes with it as well if you want. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful.
We call it play for a reason.
Yes. Yeah, I think some people lose that aspect of it as well. So you've lived through decades of experience, and I imagine that you've seen a lot of change in the BDSM culture. What would you say, what was the gay leather and kink scene like at that time when you were having all of these formative experiences compared to what people see today?
Oh, well, you have to remember that in the 80s, when I was with Guy and sort of entering this very public part of my life, the gay men's community had to deal with AIDS, and that changed a lot. It changed how we played for a long time. It changed how involved we got in community. Community got stronger during that time period, not less. It was a strong, unified, cohesive community that, and not just the gay men's leather scene, but I would say the gay community generally and our allies were very, very unified. And so if there is any positive one can get out of that pretty horrific era, it's
Mm.
that community really happened. I had not been much of a joiner of clubs or organizations or projects or efforts prior to that time. And all of a sudden I found myself, oh, I have to dive in and do something. And so that I'm sorry, what was the original question? Sorry.
That's okay. No, it's okay. I'm sure a lot of memories are coming up for you right now.
They
I was,
are. That was a
yeah,
very emotional time.
yeah. I was just asking about how the scene has changed from those
Oh,
formative years when you were first
thank you.
exploring with Guy and having these incredible experiences. And yeah, if you could just share what you've seen over those years in terms of how the BDSM culture has changed. Mm.
Oh, I would love, and it has changed dramatically.
Hmm.
Um, and some for the better, some for not, but it's absolutely changed a lot. Uh, Prior to, I would say, the early 90s, gay men, lesbians, heterosexuals, bisexuals, and there's a bunch of identifiers that I'm not including, did not mix very much.
Mm.
They would occasionally mix socially, very rarely in play environments, and very rarely did they work together in an organized way. But at least in the United States, in the 90s, all of a sudden they said, oh, heterosexual players and gay players and lesbian players and everybody else on the spectrum of orientation and identity have a lot in common. And we could work together with a lot of things. We could create spaces that we could all share so that we could afford those spaces. We could work on projects together so that we have more numbers and more money and more effort and more bodies to throw at these projects. So I think that was a big change. I think the scene has diversified to the point where many of the kink scenes are truly their own separate scenes and they do not overlap very much with the others. Once upon a time, I think leather, BDSM, kink, fetish, whatever you want to call it, if you think of Venn diagrams, they were all circles on top of each other.
Hmm.
And over time, those circles have begun to separate, and the common overlap that the circles have has lessened. So you have heterosexual BDSM players over here having their own distinct community. You have gay men who play as pups, which is a whole new kind of kink realm that's developed in the gay men's community primarily, that really didn't exist many years
Oh, I
ago.
didn't
And
realize
they
it
have
was so
their,
new. Okay.
it's
Yeah.
very new.
Ah,
Uh, if I go back to my early roots, in the 70s and 80s, I don't remember a single person who was pup identified.
wow.
So yeah, it's a very new thing. So that's a very good example of how the scene has splintered, and in many good ways, because we didn't have to be everything to everybody. The rubber people can go off and do their thing. The people who like BDSM do their thing. The people who are into power dynamics and that is their main jam, and that's what they really like, have their own set, particular community, and they do overlap. But I'm seeing more and more of a splintering,
Mm.
and I'm not sure it's a bad thing, as long as all the splintered groups do understand that there is, in that overlap of interest, a lot of common things they can do together
Hmm.
that are still important and don't stay entirely distant from each other. But I do think that we have entirely separate scenes that didn't exist so much as separate scenes now. I think the internet's partly responsible for that. I think the openness of kink, leather, BDSM, fetish, and the fact that it's talked about more openly in common discourse has allowed people to find themselves. And so if somebody says, oh, I'm really into rubber, oh, there's an entire community that does this, I'm going over there. Once upon a time, there was really only one big community. They had to find their people within that community. So now
Mm.
they can find those people rather easily. And I think the internet is responsible for a lot of that.
Mm. Do you see any events where people are still, any general BDSM events where people are all mixing together still? Or are you saying it really is just these separate communities?
No, there are definitely there. I'll be going to one in Sacramento, California. I think it's end of April, and it is. I would say it's probably primarily heterosexual. A lot of lesbians, some gay men, a lot of pansexual, uh, mostly BDSM players, but also a lot of fetishists and
Mm-hmm.
people that just like the gear. And so, no, there are many events like that that still take place. And there are many events that are entirely separate. And I actually think that's the ideal balance.
Mm.
I think I'm a big believer in there being times when people should be all together if they want to be. And then I think there are times when people need their own space. I tell this story because it represents how I feel. There was a group on the East Coast of the United States. I won't say specifically what group, but one of the leaders of the group came to me and said, we're a heterosexual BDSM play group, and we're getting a lot of pressure to let lesbians and gay men in. And we have nothing against lesbians and gay men, but we really want to be heterosexuals playing with other heterosexuals because we're a play group. And that's what really brings us joy, so to speak. And I said, well, stick to your guns and just do that. That's okay. There's
Mm.
plenty of other events for lesbians and gay men. I said, not every event has to be for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I believe we need mixed spaces, and then what I often refer to as affinity spaces, places where if lesbians and women need a space to their own for play or socialization or whatever, they should be able to have that. And so I believe a balance. So I think we've actually reached a nice balance between mixed and separate.
Oh, that's really good to hear because I've spoken to quite a few people around your age, and not everyone has such a positive comment about how the BDSM world has changed. So that's really interesting to hear your perspective.
Can I can I say something about that?
Please.
Uh, I mean, I'm a 72-year-old white guy, and there are a lot of people that have, especially the ones that have been around for a while, that are very grumpy about change. And I'm not. I think change is the norm. Change is the way the world works. Stagnation is awful, but a lot of people want things to just stay exactly the way they always were. And it isn't always older people, but there are a lot of people that have been around like my age who just don't like change. That said, I am heartened that there are a lot of people my age that have my perspective and they welcome younger people, new kinds of kinks, new kinds of players, new orientations. We're learning new vernaculars, new gender identities, new kink identities, new sexual identities, etc. And at least there's now words for them. Let's put it that way. And we do learn and we do grow and we do want the world to keep growing, including our kink world. And we still have plenty of spaces where we can go, and it looks very much just like it always was, and it functions just like it always was. And that's why I say we need affinity spaces. But
Mm.
there are a lot of people who don't like change.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's a never ending world of learning, right? Eroticism, which is what I love about it. mm.
Me too.
hmm Let's chat more about your erotic evolution. You mentioned earlier that you identified primarily as dominant earlier in your life, and at some point you became a switch. Can you share about that journey? What drew you first to dominance, and what allowed you to realize that you were, in fact, a switch?
So I came out into the scene absolutely as a dominant and a top. And I think if I get truly honest with myself, which I try to do, um, I was young. I was a gymnast and a dancer, so I had a rockin' body, not bad looking, and I'm a pretty smart dude, and I picked up a lot of skills. And I learned very early on that as a very skilled, dominant top who wasn't a total asshole, I could lure in a lot of players and have a lot of fun. And I stayed in that lane for a long time because of that. And then at some point I realized that in my head, I wanted to explore the other side, but I was very much stuck in my own top dom persona. And it was difficult to navigate out of that into being more of a switch and versatile.
Mm.
And sexually, I've always been a little versatile, but now I'm very, very versatile. But from a power dynamic, dom sub and kink, I really, really stayed in that dom top realm for a long time. And I very much tiptoed into becoming a switch. It wasn't like the doors flew open and, oh, look at whatever. But one thing the most powerful thing I ever did was, it was in an article or something, and I came out publicly as a switch. And in fact, there's a very famous older gay men's leather kink BDSM magazine called Drummer. And somebody in the pages of Drummer once called me the president of Switches Are Us.
Mm.
And so I think by declaring that and so being honest with the world that that's what I was able to more openly express that and do that. And the really interesting thing was, and I've said this many times, I remember there's a gay men's kinky hookup site called Recon. And I remember when I changed my profile from 100% top to, I think I said 70%. You could do it in percentages. Mm-hmm. I think I said 70% top, whatever it was. I was, now it's 50-50 in there. But I tiptoed. But when I did that, more people on the sub side of the spectrum contacted me wanting to play. More, and I wasn't doing bad before, but it was an interesting phenomenon. And my theory is that when a submissive sees a dominant who is honest about having a subside, whether they engage it that way or not, they realize they might have a certain amount of empathy that perhaps the others who don't have that subside don't have. I'm going to say 100% dominance can often have a lot of empathy. Mm-hmm. They can be brilliant players, entirely safe, lovely human beings. However, I do think that when one has some sub/bottom experience, that it does give you an appreciation for that other side of the equation that you might not have otherwise. And I think submissives pick up on that. Mm-hmm. And I have talked to other people that have, in fact, I have a man collared now for 14, 15 years who was pretty much entirely dominant before he met me. And he called me and he said, you came out as a switch and nobody gave a shit. It's like, you're as popular as you ever were and you play as much or more than you ever did. I want to do that. How did you do that? And we talked for many, many months, and lo and behold, I ended up collaring him, and we've been in a relationship ever since. But he also did the same sort of thing. And he says, oh yeah, interesting. More people are coming at me being a switch. And I would talk to other people that would experience the same progression from all dominant to be more of a switch. And when they publicly came out, they said, oh yeah, more subs are more interested now than ever. Mm. And so it wasn't just me. And I'm not saying it's a universal experience, but I've certainly talked to a lot of people for whom that is an experience. And so when people ask now, I'm clearly switch, versatile, identified. And I always tell people in practice, I'm probably 80% top and dom. In my head, I am 50-50. And I don't know why that's shaken out the way it is, but I still love being a top and a dom. Maybe that's why I don't really want to go just to the other side. So, but I am, and if I have any regret, it's that I wasn't more explorative. Is that a word? Explorative?
Oh, really?
Earlier, I think I would have liked to have explored being a switch earlier in my kink path than I did. And I always tell people when they ask me advice on that, I say, yeah, just be exactly who you want to be and let the chips fall where they may. You're going to be a lot happier. I was pretty happy dude all along, but I think it would have been even better
Mm-hmm.
had I done those explorations earlier.
How old were you when you started exploring your switch side?
40s,
Mm-hmm.
maybe, but I'll be honest. 40s, I had a handful of experiences. And then it really wasn't until my 50s, even my late 50s, that I really came out as a switch.
Mm.
So I very much came out more later in life as a switch.
Mm-hmm.
But I recommend to everybody, if whatever side of the equation, or if you like something on, I think most people are versatile to some extent, or switch to some extent, even if they function primarily as a dom or a sub. There's always something that they like that, oh, I could do that, you know.
Mm.
and and I think that when they get that tingle for exploration, they should act on it. And I also think a lot of submissives feel like they're stuck in that role too.
Mm.
They might be well known as a submissive. They might have had a high profile relationship with a dominant. So everybody in their community sees them that way. And then when they want to explore being more dominant, they're not taken as seriously, which is total bullshit. In fact, I think they should be taken more seriously because they've been on that side of the equation. They know exactly what to do. So I do think people get locked into a persona, a role, a certain amount of credibility within a community that is based on what they've seen already, and it keeps them from exploring.
Mm. Yeah, say yes to those tingles. I love that.
Yes. I've never used that word in an interview, tingle, but I'm going to do it more often.
Now, one of the traditions on the podcast is exploring a research article with you. And today's is by sociologist Hennon, who studied different gay male subcultures in his work Fairies, Bears, and Leatherman. And he suggests that these communities didn't reject masculinity, but actually reshaped and reimagined it, creating alternative forms of masculine identity through sexuality, ritual, and power. Leather culture in particular became a space where masculinity, eroticism, and identity could be explored outside of mainstream expectations. I'm curious to hear from you. Does that idea of redefining masculinity through kink resonate with your own experience in leather culture?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I was initially drawn to hypermasculinity. That was just what really floated my boat early on in my um, explorations. But I do think that the leather community, the bear community that you mentioned, and the fairy community have reshaped and curated a new kind of masculinity that serves them in a way that makes them happiest, but it doesn't necessarily look like what masculinity looked like once upon a time.
Mm-hmm.
And I also am really a believer that pretty much everyone has a masculine and feminine side. It's that whole, yin yang thing. I think something is predominant perhaps, but almost everybody has a little something of either in them. Um, but I don't think that our eroticism can be easily rewired. I think for
Mm.
whatever, there was a very famous analyst at University of California, LA, and his name was Robert Stoller, and he did a lot of ethnographic research. And I had lunch with him one day. In fact, it was with Guy, the partner I was talking about. We were having lunch, and he was one of the foremost sexuality researchers in the world. And I said, "What's your theory about why we are the way we are? Why are we kinky, and why are we gay, and why are we, this and that and whatever?" And he said, "The best theory we can come up with is that there's maybe 5,000 factors floating around that mush together into a stew, and that stew cooks, and out of that stew comes you. And it depend. All those factors have different proportions, different power over the other factors, et cetera. But that's why no two people are really alike.
Mm-hmm.
But I think per that research article, what people have done is they've thrown more things into that masculinity stew, and out comes new ways of being masculine. For example, simple modern example, many men paint their nails now.
Mm-hmm.
Many very masculine men paint their nails now. Once upon a time, that would have been seen as a hyper feminine affectation and very much judged. Now it's a thing. They have reinvented, that's not just within kink, that's within culture generally. They have sort of reinvented what masculine, what can look like.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that the fairies did that in a very conscious way, because they're very much about ritual and, you know, talking circles and things like that. Fairies are that way. Bears did it because they wanted to redefine what masculine was in terms of body image. And leather people found a way to be masculine. And even within modern leather culture, they still do, but they find new ways to do it that don't look anything like what masculinity looked once upon a time.
Mm.
I remember a good example is I know there are leathermen now who wear high heels.
Mm.
Again, that is something that would never have been looked upon with anything but scorn once upon a time. Now, a lot of guys think it's hot.
Mm.
And I could give a whole bunch of other examples. So some of it is the way we express ourselves that have reshaped and curated a new kind of masculinity. And some of it is the culture letting us do that, like painted nails, high heels, more feminine attire. You know, you see people on the red carpets, men in garb clothing they would never have worn many, many years ago, because they're allowed to wear something a little more feminine and still be considered masculine in their own way.
Mm. Do you think masculinity itself is being redefined in broader society currently?
I do. I hope
Mm.
it is,
Mm-hmm.
because the hyper masculine, frankly misogynistic view of masculinity is just awful. You know, we know, you know, the manosphere is a very good example of,
Mm.
of how bad masculinity can be. We're treating women as second-class citizens, and that form of masculinity, I hope, just dies on the vine, because it is toxic and it is awful and it is bad for society always. And so I do think that a lot of people are chucking that. I mean, there's still people that embrace it, unfortunately, but there's a lot of people that are chucking that, and you go, no, no, sorry, men and women are completely equal. Sorry. No, if I paint my nails, or I'm the one who washes the dishes and my wife is the one going to work, it really doesn't matter. I'm still masculine in my own sense.
Mm.
And I think that's positive, because I believe really, really masculine men that are embracing the masculinity in the best of ways honor and respect not just women, but in this day and age, everyone of any gender on the spectrum. They respect them fully and consider them all equal to them. And if they don't, then, you know, to hell with them.
That's a great definition of healthy masculinity. So thank you for that. That's been one of the themes that's come up again and again in the podcast, this need for a definition around healthy masculinity, because we know what toxic masculinity is, but a lot of the time we don't talk about what healthy masculinity is. So yeah, thank you for that. So another tradition on the podcast is exploring a quote with you. And today's quote is from none other than Oscar Wilde, who was an Irish author, poet, and playwright. During his 1895 trial, Oscar Wilde described same-sex love as the love that dare not speak its name. And he was actually imprisoned from 1895 to 1897 after being convicted of gross indecency for homosexual acts. At that time, simply expressing love between two men could lead to imprisonment. And when we look at the history of queer communities, including leather and kink spaces, it's striking how many of those environments became places where people could finally express their desires openly. So when you hear that phrase of Oscar Wilde's today, what does it evoke for you personally as a gay man?
At 72 years of age, I am old enough to still remember when police would raid gay bars in
Mm.
the States. I remember a friend of mine being whisked off the sidewalk where a bunch of us were walking. He was a drag queen, and the police pulling up and saying, "Do you have this many articles of men's clothing on? And if you don't, we're arresting you."
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, no, yeah, we had to get him out of jail. We did. Luckily, we had city contacts, and we did. Um, so so the Dare Not Speak is its name. I really relate to, because I came out in an era when being a gay man certainly was an underground endeavor.
Hmm.
Our bars and our sex clubs and things like that were very much underground. I live in San Francisco, and the Twin Peaks bar, which is 2 blocks from my house, was the very first bar in the United States, gay bar, that had windows that opened to the outside where people could see in and out.
Wow.
And that was considered groundbreaking at the time, because our life was so clandestine that that was a very powerful act to do that. So it evokes that. And also, being somebody who's been very involved in LGBTQ politics and civil rights for a long time, I've seen the arc go. The arc of the universe goes toward moral justice, or whatever that phrase is, and it's definitely gone more toward more justice for queer people. But we're now seeing sort of a right-wing set of influences in the United States, for sure, in Germany a little bit, in the UK somewhat, in other parts of the world, that are kind of bringing back the homophobic, transphobic, et cetera, feelings. And I am hoping we can blunt that impact and stop it, because that that is scary.
Hmm.
Um, I have trans people that are close friends who are truly scared right now.
Mm.
And then in the UK, for example, they also have a very big anti-trans movement. And I believe that the transphobia is really the canary in the coal mine, that if they can succeed with that, they will go after the rest of the queer spectrum. I really believe that. And
Mm.
so I think that's why standing up for trans people is so important, because if they fall as having, no civil rights, the powers that on the sort of right end of the spectrum will see, oh, we succeeded with that. Let's go after queer people. And frankly, anyone marginalized, people of color, immigrants, we could go through the whole list. So I think they are the canary in the coal mine, which is why they have to be defended so much.
Mm. You've lived through decades of political change. How does the current political environment in America compare to those previous times? Would you say it feels more dangerous than most of the previous decades?
I think it felt very dangerous still in the 70s and even the
Hmm.
80s. It
Hmm.
was still fairly clandestine. It was still mostly underground. It was still mostly not talked about in general public discourse. That began to change in the 90s, certainly through the 90s, 2000s, uh, and even 2010s. Um, it was mostly about progress. Now in the United States, we're seeing a lot of stepping back from that. A lot of attacks on trans people, a lot of attacks on queer people generally, stupid things like legislating tearing up rainbow sidewalks and things like that, where it's clearly an attack on the queer community. And that said, I am seeing a lot of pushback and a lot of allies coming to um, our defense, because if you look at the polling, the vast majority of people uh, are very supportive of the LGBTQ community.
Hmm.
Also, there was a recent poll, and I am I may be misquoting the percentage, but I believe it was something up to 23% of the under 25s in the United States identify somewhere on the queer spectrum.
Mm. Hmm.
So, and that could be a whole lot of different things, but the point is, I think that generation is going to grow up and feel entirely differently. I think it's a lot of older, mostly white men who are trying to push this anti-LGBTQ agenda, and I think they're going to fail.
Hmm. Mm. Well, hopefully, yes.
Yes. We're working on it.
Let's chat more about your writing. You're also a writer, and one of your creations in particular caught my eye, and the title is Kink Is My Superpower. Can you share with us what this is about and what inspired you to write it?
So the overall project is called Kink Is My Superpower. The book is called Kink Is.
Okay.
And what happened was a group of us got together a while back and decided to do a documentary about kink. And we had been working for many years. And over the course of that work, a publisher came to us and said, you've done we interviewed, I think, 300 people around the world. And
Wow.
so some of them were just like Zoom interviews, but some of them we'd actually already done recordings of. And he said, you have all this great material. Why don't we do a book? And the book Kink Is came out of that documentary project. And it's doing extremely well. It's in its third or fourth printing. I forget which. It's selling extremely well. It's very popular. We are still working on the documentary, and the documentary project is called Kink Is My Superpower. And so, in fact, we are probably going to be launching a YouTube channel soon where we can put some of the clips we've already shot up on YouTube so people can sort of see what we've been doing. But so we are still moving ahead with this documentary project and hoping that, and it's, there's, depending upon the day, there's 5 or 6 of us or 7 of us working on it. All of us would be considered sort of affiliated with it in some way. Margaret Cho, the comedian, is part of our project. She actually wrote the foreword to our book. And she's part of it tangentially at the moment, but she's still part of it.
How amazing. I look forward to watching it. I love Margaret Cho. She's so cool.
She is. She's a real. I've known her for a while. She's a great person.
Mm-hmm. What does it mean to you personally to describe kink as a superpower? Why is kink a superpower?
For me, so here's what's interesting. When we asked people during all these interviews, what is kink? Everybody came away with a different definition, which was fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's part of its power, is that kink can be what you want it to be. And while you're exploring it, you find yourself. So it becomes a superpower. If I know so many people that have gotten into some realm or aspect of kink who've come out of it after a little bit of time exploring it, empowered, stronger, more mentally healthy, with more community, more friends, control over their own sexuality in a way that they never had before. They have this model of consent that they never really verbalized before. They have this idea that you can construct exactly the kind of sexuality you want, and nobody gets to tell you that that's wrong, unless it's something illegal. So yeah, it's an empowering thing. So it is a superpower, and that name came out of us talking to a lot of people who would say, "Oh, this is kind of my superpower," and so it really is, for many people, it is their superpower. I'll give but one example, and I won't give a name, but a woman we interviewed had been in a bad relationship, and it wasn't always, great. Let's put it that way. I'm not going to get into specifics, but she got into kink after she left that relationship. And she said, as a woman, I never, ever, ever felt more powerful in my life. And so I do think it is a superpower for many people. And kink is generic and general enough to allow you to morph it into whatever it is you want it to be. It could be a lifestyle. It could be something you do on the weekends. It could be something you do by yourself. It could be something you do just with your committed partner. It could be something you do with friends. It could be anything you want it to be. And that's just the social part of it. Then there's the activity part of it. You can do absolutely anything. Almost anything can be kinky. Some people like business suits, and that's kinky to them. Some people like, a certain kind of garb. Some people like certain parts of their bodies played with. Some people like, dungeon atmosphere. Some people like to do things in groups. You name it, it allows you to really discover yourself, and it is indeed your superpower.
I love that so much. And I love that the title came out of the interviews in an organic way. That's so cool. When are you expecting to have the documentary available?
That is the golden question, because we're in the raising money phase.
Right.
I will send you the YouTube link when it goes up, and when people see the clips, they can actually donate to our documentary if they're so inclined.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll have the QR code in the website at the end of every clip. And you can go to kinkismysuperpower.com right now. It will give you some information, but we're really proud of the fact that we're about to launch this YouTube channel, and excited about it.
Amazing. I'll be sure to share it around and mention it on the podcast as well to help with that fundraising, because it sounds like, an amazing documentary. Thank you for doing it. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So I asked you to bring along something to share today, and I believe that you have a quote that you want to share and tell us how it's influenced your erotic realm. What did you bring along?
So I am a quote collector. I have a document with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of quotes and aphorisms that I've collected over the years. Very short, succinct wording that's powerful has always impressed me in a way that sometimes longer does not. Mm-hmm. So quotes are something I really love. But I have one quote that has remained my favorite for decades. And it's, for long time. It's from Dr. Seuss.
Cool.
And for anybody who doesn't know Dr. Seuss, he was a children's book author and very famous, and they've made some of his things into movies, etc. But this is the quote: "Today you are you, that is truer than true. There is no one alive who is youer than you." And I love it because it speaks to everyone's uniqueness, everyone being different than someone else, which I think is, I do not like conformity. I don't like sameness. I like people to be unique. And I try to do that myself and not be the same person today that I was yesterday. But whatever person I am, I want it to be me, not some version of myself that I've cobbled together to conform to some expectation, although we all do that to some extent. But I try not to. I try to resist other people's expectations, mm-hmm. and be me as much as possible. And I really encourage other people to be exactly themselves, even if you stand out a little bit, even if you look or function or act or are different than someone else. Being yourself is the ultimate joy. And so, being youer than you mm-hmm. Really had an impact when I first read that quote.
And it's really sexy when someone's being themselves too. You get a sense of it, and it's a turn on. Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, people being themselves is authenticity rocks.
Yep.
And authenticity is sexy. And the moment you encounter someone who feels like a cartoon character of a person, they're, that might be fine for about an hour or two during a certain kind of play or something, mm-hmm. but it's not good day to day.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So as we've explored, you've been living and experiencing kink now for decades. I'm curious to hear from you. What's a peak erotic experience that stands out that you're happy to share with us today from all of this exploration?
I'm going to talk about a scene I did with the man I have collared. We were at a pansexual event. So it was, we used to call it, it was in Arizona. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was an annual event that people would go to, hundreds of people, many of them heterosexual identified, pansexual identified, gay, lesbian, whatever, but the entire event felt kind of queer. I don't know how to say it, but we were doing a scene in the main dungeon at the event, and I had him tied up, and I was throwing everything plus the kitchen sink at him. It was one of those mega scenes, and I think we were the only gay men in the dungeon at the time playing. It was mostly het, pan, lesbian, etc. around us. I don't recall any other gay men. And at one point, I turned And they literally had like bleachers at one end because the space just ended up having to have bleachers. It wasn't that they put them there. And there were like 30 people on the bleachers just watching our scene. And I remember, and this was kind of conscious because I was sort of trying to demonstrate switchdom to a group of people that I wasn't sure were always comfortable with being a switch. So when I took him down off the cross 2 hours later, and I had a big mat and we were on there rolling around, and I put an electric butt plug in his butt and another one in mine, and I turned the box on to jolt both of our butts while we made out and kissed for like half an hour. And to this day, people from that event still tell us, oh my God, that was one of the hottest scenes I've ever seen.
Hmm.
And I think part of it was, I'm so into this person. And we just play so well together. And we both have decided to live very out as ourselves. And I have a lot of amazing scenes over the years, but that's the one that stands out.
Beautiful. I can see why it stands out. There's nothing like seeing two people with amazing chemistry just completely in it and exploring. That's something from the past. What about the future? What's something that you're looking forward to exploring?
Oh, that's a really good question. I have much of my life is more streamlined than it used to, and that includes my kink. I used to have this, massive dungeon and gear everywhere and all that stuff. And I make the joke that I now carry a much smaller toy bag than I used to. So I'm a little bit more into the interpersonal dynamics and less concerned with the physical architecture of BDSM. I don't necessarily need highly complex bondage, and I don't need massive amounts of gear and things like that. So I take a lot of my original BDSM from Tony DeBlas, who was as close to a mentor as I had. He created the Leather Pride flag. He founded the Leather Archives and Museum. He was editor of Drummer Magazine. He was an amazing man, and probably to this day, the best BDSM player I've ever witnessed playing. And he would pull his scenes out of this little box, and people would bring in trunks of stuff. And then he would have this little box and he would do these scenes that were just magical. And I'm kind of emulating him in terms of my sexuality. And in terms of everything else, I plan to stay living in San Francisco. I love living here. It's very gay. It's very kink friendly. It's very queer friendly. It's very everyone friendly. And so I like that. And I spend a good amount of time in Palm Springs as well, which is also in California, for listeners that don't know that. Also a lot of gay men who live there. So there's a theme there. And I really want to keep doing new things. Some friends and I have a podcast called On Guard Cigar Salon that we're in our third or fourth year doing that. I plan to keep writing. I have more books I want to write. I'm working on a bunch of community projects. This documentary I'm working on. So I have a lot to look forward to in the future. The one thing I know that I'm not going to do is sit on a porch in a rocking chair retired.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like your vibe. I don't remember the name of the person you just mentioned, but you said they had the small box and their scenes were magical. Can you share what was magical about their scenes? I'm curious about that.
Sure. His name, and people can Google him. He's famous. Tony, Tony Gony, DeBlase, Deblase. Remarkable man. And anyone who's seen the Leather Pride flag anywhere, he created that. So he's the reason for that. Yeah, he's one of many things that he did. But what was magical was that he didn't go for the spectacle. He went for the intimacy. When you would watch him play, he was so into the person he was playing with. And it could be the simplest little things that he was doing. And other people that were playing were often going for more spectacle, which is a whole other way to play, and it's viable. But there's something really lovely about the intimacy with which he played. And he was kind of a big, heavy man, but he was just the most loving, sexy, skilled player I've ever seen. He was magic.
Mm.
And everybody who watched the scenes would say the same thing. They said there's just something special about the way he plays. And I think it's because he put intimacy before the erotic gymnastics.
It reminds me of a shibari class that I took where the teacher said focus on the feeling more than the techniques, giving the feeling
Yep.
of the rope.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I think that is a good guiding light for all sexuality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So where can people find out more about you and your work? Where is the best place to go?
So I'm on Substack. I have 2 Substacks and under the name Race Bannon, and you should be able to find me there. One's called Love at the Edges, which is about sexuality and relationships, and the other is called Musings from a Curious Mind, which is when I riff about all kinds of different things. I have a Medium newsletter. I'm all over social media, and you can find me either at Race Bannon or Bannon Race on almost all the platforms. And the podcast that I do, you can find at On Guard Salon. If you do look for that, and it will take you to our YouTube channel. And we're also available on a couple of podcast streaming services. And as you said, the Kink Is My Superpower documentary, you can go to kinkismysuperpower.com, and it will direct you to the documentary, our book, and other things.
Amazing. And finally, if you had to describe yourself in one word, your erotic self in one word and one word only, what would it be and why?
Content.
Hmm.
Yeah, I am pretty content. Everyone, all human beings have ups and downs, but I'm in the grand scheme of things, I'm pretty content, even in this kind of crazy world we live in right now. I guess it's always a crazy world, but it's a little crazier right now. On a personal micro level, even if the macro is kind of screwed up, I'm pretty content on that micro level, and yeah, I'm pretty happy.
That's great to hear. Well, Race, thank you for bringing such depth, history, and honesty into this conversation. You've lived through and contributed to entire eras of sexual culture, and your perspective is incredibly valuable, not just for understanding kink, but for understanding ourselves. Thank you for sharing your erotic realm today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you again. I'm Em, and this has been the Erotic Realm Podcast. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Erotic Realm Podcast. This is an independent podcast. If you want to see more episodes made, you can support it at psychologyofdesire.com by becoming a paid subscriber and entering the realm with many other supporters. The mission of the Erotic Realm is to humanize kink and desire in all of its forms. And we can't do that without you. Until the next time, stay perverted.